Welcome back, guys. This lesson is going to be pretty exciting because we are going to actually edit our videos now for the first time. So I'm here again inside Premiere Pro, of course, and I already had my stuff imported inside Premiere here in my project panel. And let's start by opening one of our clips. So I'm going to expand the footage folder, and let's, for example, double click here on clip number 12. Now, double clicking on that clip will open it up in the source monitor here on top. And from here, we can play that clip. We have a play button right here that will just play the clip as it is. We can also stop that. We can also take the playheads right here and just scrub through that video. I believe that this is not something new. It's something that we are used to when just using a normal media player. But there are a few things right here which are a little bit different than a media player. Right here, you can see a drop-down menu which says a half. We can click on that and we can choose from full, a half, a quarter, and 1/8. And that is the playback quality. If you have trouble playing back your clips right in here in the source monitor, you can change that to a different resolution. Of course, at full, it will display the entire resolution, and thus it's sometimes not so easy for your computer to handle that. So if you are noticing choppy playback, change that to a half or maybe a quarter or even 1/8. We can also find some time indicators here on the left side and on the right side. If you are going to scrub through that clip, you will see here on the left side some very weird number, 5 hours, 20 minutes, 35 or 37 seconds. What is that all about? Well, that is your time code, and usually you can ignore that. So don't worry too much about that. If you are going to sync up multiple cameras and such, then time codes will get importance. But if you are just going to edit individual projects, then don't worry too much here about that left side. This right here is your clip length. So it's 21 seconds and 6 frames long. So it's a bit more than just 21 seconds, and that way you always instantly know how long that clip is. And then there's one last drop-down menu that I want to show you guys, and that's right here. It says fit, and that is the zoom level of our video inside the source monitor. We can, for example, change that to 10%, and now we are kind of zooming out. And as I'm going to rescale that window, it will always stick at that 10%. When I'm going to say at 100%, it's a 4K file, so that is actually larger than the actual panel is. So that way we can kind of zoom in digitally on that clip. And by the way, we are still viewing our source. We're not editing yet. Keep that in mind. So this is not to zoom in into a clip. Let's change that back to fit. And fit means it will always change its size to the panel width. So I can just change the size here of that panel and you can see that the clip will adjust itself. So that is the basic functionality of the source monitor, just to play back your clips. And that is going to be a very important window. We're going to use this very often. Let's go back to my project panel down below here. Also a panel that we'll be using very often. What I'm going to do is create a sequence because I've deleted the one that I had created in the previous lesson. I'm going to click on the new item button down below here to create a new sequence. And I'm going to take that 1080p 25 frames sequence. And let's just name that again, my edit. Press OK. There we go. So we have an active timeline now because we have created a sequence. That is good. Now let's go back to that source monitor right here. We have opened up clip number 12, and what we can actually do now is bring this source here into our timeline. And we can do so very easily by just dragging that entire clip like this. I'm dragging it right now into the timeline. And we've seen this in a previous lesson as well. Premiere will ask us whether or not we would like to change the sequence settings. And I'm just going to say, keep the existing settings. And now you'll find that there is like a fourth window which is asking for some attention. And this right here is the program monitor. And the difference between the program monitor and the source monitor is that the program monitor resembles the timeline. So that will show everything that we're playing in the timeline. And again, if you have your timeline active, just click on it, press the spacebar to play that clip. You're now looking at that clip in your edit. So if you would make changes to this clip right here, you would see these changes in our program monitor and not in the source monitor. This will only here resemble the stuff that we are seeing out from our project or the source panel. So that is something very important to understand how that kind of works. I know that for some who are coming from things like iMovie or Windows Movie Maker, where you only have that one screen, that this could be a little bit overwhelmed, but eventually having these two monitors is actually very convenient. You just have to understand that we have a source and a program monitor, or the result. Now looking at the program monitor, we can basically see the same buttons here as well. We can play that video, we can stop it. We can also use these buttons right here to step 1 frame forward. Just per click, you will constantly step 1 frame forward or 1 frame backwards. We have that same button here in the program monitor as well. And we also see that resolution size right here. And you might think, why do we have that twice? You know, if we choose for a certain playback resolution, can't we just choose that for everything? Well, that's because usually your source clip are not that heavy. I mean, we can set that, for example, at full and it will play back just smoothly as we want, like this. But if we are going to edit our videos and we're going to put lots of effects onto our clips, then it might not play back that smooth anymore. And then you might want to change your program monitor to a lower resolution to make sure that these clips play back more smooth. So that is like the main difference between these two panels. Alright, let's have a look at a problem that we are running into. It seems like the clip here in our timeline or in the program monitor has been zoomed in. And we've talked about this before. We are sticking a larger resolution file, a 4K resolution, into a 1080p sequence, which is much smaller. It doesn't fit in there. So how can we fix that? Again, we've talked about this before as well. We can downscale this clip. And that is simply done by right-clicking on that clip in your timeline, like so. And then down below somewhere, let me just scroll down, we can say set to frame size. And that will change that clip to the frame size of the sequence. Click on that and it will adapt to it. And this way we are downscaling. We are putting much more information, much more detail into a smaller sequence, which is a plus point. And later down the road, you'll also see some more advantages of doing this. Alright, we have our clip in a timeline, but what I'm going to do now is select that and press the delete key on my keyboard. Because this is not really a good way to edit videos. Let's go back to that footage folder right here. What I can do, for example, is double click on the folder itself, and that will open it up in a new tab right here on top. And I can also drag that tab to a different location. So let's say that I wanted to have it next to my project tab, like that, to the root folder, where I have all my folders, and then next to it I have my opened bin folder. Because I might want to change my view here to the icon view, like that, so that I can see the shots that I've shot, so I can see visually which shots that I'm picking out. And the cool thing about Premiere here is that we can actually hover these shots, and by hovering it, we are already playing it back. So that is pretty cool. So that way we instantly know, okay, these are the shots that I need. So let's have a look here. This here is the first shot, clip number 1. This is something that I want to drag into my sequence. Is this the right shot? Yes, that's the right one. So I'm going to double click on it to open it up in the source monitor. And what I want to do now is actually only take out the part from this source that I need and drag that to my sequence. The rest I'll already cut off from the source. And those pieces that I want to cut off is, for example, here all the way in the beginning, where I'm telling Kim, and you'll see her more often throughout this class, she's going to be our lovely model, to start walking. So only at the point where she starts walking, I want to let this clip start. All the rest before that, I don't want to use. So what I'm going to do here is set an in point. And that way I'm telling to Premiere, all right, from here, from this, you can start using that clip. And there are two ways to set that in point. You can either click here on the Mark In button in your controls here from the source panel. Let's just click on that, and as you can see, it has now created a selection of that clip. Or another way to do it is also press the I key on your keyboard, and that stands for in point. Now let's move further, because I want to use this whole walk here of Kim. She's waving like this, and right here, I want to stop that selection again. So now I can just press the O key on my keyboard, or the out point, or you can also use this button right here, which says Mark Out. And now you can see that we have made a selection of that clip. And what will happen now when I'm going to drag this source clip here to my timeline is that it will only take that specific selection. Let's just say keep existing settings for now. I'm also going to right click on that clip and set it to the frame size, like so. And let's play this clip now, the entire clip, just hit the space bar like so. You will see now that we have only dragged in that specific part of that clip into the timeline. And that way we're already editing a bit. We are throwing away the stuff that we don't need. We are making some sort of a pre-selection, and that is going to help us more with the edit later on. Now, a question that I always get here from my students is, did I just change something to the source of my clip? Well, whenever you are editing inside Premiere, you are never making actual changes to your source clip. Keep that in mind. So don't worry if you are deleting clips in here, if you are changing or selecting with these in and out points or making any kind of edit, you're never actually touching these source files. And let me demonstrate this to you. We have just made a selection of that clip. Now let me go back here to that same clip in the source panel. And what I'm going to do is make another selection. So let's say that I only want to have the wave of Kim right here. What I'm going to do is set an in point like that, go a bit further in time until she stops waving, and set an out point. So I've made a different selection now as that I did previously. What I can do now is drag that clip again in my timeline. So that means I can keep making selections, different selections from the same clip and keep dragging that to the timeline, because sometimes you want to use multiple parts of the same clip. Now let's have a closer look here at the timeline. What's going on here? We can see tons of things going on in here. Let me explain what we're seeing. First of all, I'm going to zoom in a little bit more into my timeline. We can see this scroll bar, which we can scroll with to the left and the right. But if I'm going to take the outsides of that scroll bar, I can actually just zoom in into that timeline, like so. I can also enlarge the tracks because we can see two tracks in here, horizontal. On top here is the video track, and you can also see it here on the left side. It says V1, V2, V3, and you can see this as layers. If you are familiar with Photoshop, or you can also work with different layers in Photoshop, here we can also work with different tracks in Premiere Pro. So all the V's are video tracks, and down below that, we can see all the audio tracks with the letter A. So this clip right here has some video and it has some audio. Now we can enlarge that a little bit when we are going to work more specific on that clip, then it could be a little bit more useful. What I can do is just stand here on the left side in this column right here with my mouse, hold down the Alt key of your keyboard, and just scroll, and that way you are kind of expanding that track. And the same thing can also happen with the audio track like this. Now let's say that you have a clip. Let's just take out another one right here. For example, this one where Kim is walking here in a close-up. And let's just make a selection of that where she kind of walks a little bit goofy here. I'm going to make an in point a little bit further in time. I'm going to make an out point. There we go. And let's assume that I only want to have the video track of this layer. What I can then do is, instead of dragging this entire frame right here, is only drag this little icon right here. And this right here represents the video track only. It also says it right here, drag video only. So just drag that icon into your timeline like so, and now you can see that we've only dragged in the video track of that clip. And the same thing can be done with the audio of that clip. With this icon next to it, drag audio only. Drag that into your timeline like so, and there we go. Now, of course, we can rearrange, drag around these clips inside the timeline. Let's do that for a moment. I can just grab this clip right here, move that to the right side, grab this other clip right here, and perhaps move that to track number 2. I mean, we can also work with different tracks or layers. Take this one right here, move that perhaps below that other clip, and so on. You can just keep on moving these things in the timeline. So with this, we can kind of change the order of the clips and make an edit. So let's have a look at what we have in here. First, we had Kim walking, and as she starts waving right here, we might want to cut to a close-up of her. Now, just like with layers, the layer that sits on top is the one that we see. And you can see here that I have dragged in a different clip below the second track. And we can't see that clip because we have this one here on top. If you want to see the one below, we have to make room for that. So drag it back to the right side, and now we can see that one which was down below. And that should be simple to understand. You can see it as stacking papers on top of each other. The paper that you see is always the one that is laying on top, not the one that is laying on the bottom. Now we have been making these selections right here in the source panel. Does that mean that we can't change the selection anymore? Well, of course not. It's an editing program. The selections that we make here in the source monitor is usually a very rough selection so that we can just start editing with already the stuff cut off that we don't need. And then in the timeline, we're going to fine tune. In other words, we are going to trim the clips even more. Let's have a look at an example. I'm going to delete this second clip right here that I've also inserted and move the clip number 1 here to the track below. Let's have a look at that clip. So Kim right here, she's walking. And suddenly she starts waving, like that. And then I have a second clip right here, and let me just delete that audio, I don't need that. And I'm also going to scale that to the frame size like this. And right here we have a clip of Kim also walking and waving as well in a close-up. And what I want to do now is kind of align these two clips so that they match up with each other. So right here, Kim is walking in the long shot, and as she starts waving, I want to cut to the close-up of her waving. So that means that the rest of the shot here is not really needed anymore. There are two things here to cut that off. And the first way is by trimming a clip. And that can easily be done by just standing here on the outside of that clip and dragging that outside to my player head, like so. And now when I'm going to play this clip, you'll see that it stops just at the point as she starts waving, like that. And that is perfect because at that point, I'm going to cut to her close-up, which is this clip right here. So let me just drag that clip here next to it, like so. And that clip here starts actually with Kim first walking, and then she starts waving. So what I can do is just trim that again larger. We are making our selection longer. So take the outside and drag that longer, like this. We're not stretching it or anything, we are just changing the in and the out points. So let's look a bit further. Let's say that somewhere right here, this clip has to start. So I can just trim that back to my playhead like this, and now move that clip next to the long shot, like so. And let's play the entire thing right now. So Kim is walking in the long shot, she starts waving, and we cut to that medium shot, like so. Maybe it was a bit too short, but I guess that you know how it kind of works. We can always change our selection afterwards by just taking the outsides of the clip and dragging it longer or shorter. Now let's double click on a different clip again. For example, clip number 7. And I'm going to make a selection in here as well. So Kim here is walking, set an in point, go a bit further in time, set an out point right here. Just as on the moment where she's kind of falling here. And what I'm going to do is, for example, only drag in the video. And I'm going to drag this, let's say accidentally, over that other clip, like so. Does that mean that we have lost that piece of that first clip because we have overwritten it? We kind of wanted to have her walk a bit longer in this close-up, but we cut off that piece with that third clip that we've dragged in. Well, no worries about that. We can always make room again. Drag that third clip a little bit to the side, trim your second clip a bit longer again, and move that third clip back to the playhead. So as you can see, you can move clips around, you can trim clips, you can overwrite clips, but at all time, you're actually only making a selection. You are never really actually cutting into that clip. We are talking here about making selections, using selections and adjusting that selection in your timeline. Now, one of the things that you might have also noticed is that when I'm dragging these clips around, that they kind of snap against each other here. You can also see that right here. It's also indicating, let me just zoom in a bit more here on this. When I'm dragging that clip, it snaps against that other clip like so. And that is because I have my snapping tool enabled. And we can locate that snapping tool up here with this magnet. It also says snap right there. I'm going to zoom in on that as well. This snap tool. It's activated because it's blue. When I'm going to click on it, it's deactivated. And right now, when I'm going to drag clips around, they will not snap anymore to other clips, as you can see. And sometimes that is useful. Other times it's more useful to have your snapping tool enabled. Now let me enlarge that timeline here for a moment like this, and what I'm going to do is just drag in a few more clips. Let's just drag them right away into it on track number 1. There we go. Double click on a different one, drag that on track number 2, and maybe one more, this one, clip number 11, also drag that into the timeline, track number 2 as well. Let me just zoom out a little bit more on that timeline. So we have a bunch here on track number 1 and a bunch on track number 2, which we can, by the way, also enlarge by holding down your Alt key and scrolling inside the track here on the left side, like so. Now let's think here about a few scenarios. Let's say that I have a good edit on track number 1 and I do not want to touch that anymore. So I'm kind of afraid that I would touch that and mess it up again. What I can then do is lock that layer. And here on the left side of video track number 1, we can find this little lock right there. If we click on it, that layer is locked, which means we cannot take those clips anymore, drag them around. We can also not overwrite them with other clips, as you can see. That track and everything within it is locked. And once it's back safe, we can delock that track again. And that can be done, by the way, for any track you can find here. There's also for track number 2 and 3 and so on. The same thing goes for the audio tracks. And then the last thing what I want to show you guys in this lesson is how you can enable or disable tracks within Premiere Pro. You can kind of see it as if you have a stack of papers and then you would only see the top paper. But what if you want to look or peek at the paper below that? What you can then do is for a brief moment disable the first layer or the first paper to peek below that and see what's beneath that. And inside Premiere here in our timeline we can also do that. So I have clip number 5 right here on video track number 2. So as I'm playing this here, everything on my timeline, I would only see that clip, as you can see. But what if I want to see the stuff below that? So that means clip number 12. Well, what I can then do is disable track number 2 for a brief moment. And that is done by clicking here on this eye icon, which says toggle track output. Click on that, which will disable that track for a moment. And now I can view everything below that. And when I say, okay, it is looking good, let's just enable that again. And that is how the basic workflow in Premiere Pro works to edit your videos. You make a rough selection of your source clips, drag that to your timeline on which you can then fine-tune your clips more. You can trim your clips, move them around to different tracks and positions. What I want you guys to do now is make a small edit with the clips provided, or you can also use clips that you shot yourself and try to switch between long shots, medium shots, etc. Play around with its position, with the timeline, with the trimming, and all that kind of stuff. Practice with that, and then I'll see you guys in the next lesson where we'll dive into the more advanced techniques to edit your clips, and we'll do that by using the toolbox.